In this video, you'll uncover a hidden ritual from a manuscript lost through time, the Triangular Book of Saint Germain. It's not theory, it's a method to call in energy, command it, and reshape reality. Most will never access this level of control. It's a method to call in energy, command it, and reshape reality. Most will never access this level of control. But you are not most. You wouldn't be here otherwise. There is a book that does not look like a book. It does not lie flat on shelves. It does not open like stories are supposed to open. Its shape is not meant for comfort. It is triangular, a perfect equilateral triangle, each side measuring just over 23 centimeters, bound in gilt leather that reflects light, not just with beauty, but with warning. You are not meant to stumble upon this object. You are meant to approach it with your entire being already listening. The shape is not decoration. The triangle is a declaration of intent, of design, of alignment. The ancients built pyramids to speak with the sky, to anchor heaven to earth. They understood that the triangle was not a symbol, it was a door. Perhaps you felt it too, that pull when you see 3 points locked in perfect balance. Body, mind, spirit, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Creator, Preserver, Destroyer. These are not just ideas, they are forces, and the triangle holds them in tension, so precise that reality has no choice but to listen. That is why this book is a triangle, because it was never meant to be read in the usual sense. It was not written to entertain. It was crafted to channel. Its shape confines energy. It does not allow it to drift or dissipate. In ceremonial magic, the triangle is where a spirit is called and contained. It is where truth is bound and forced to speak. It is where intention becomes law. You were right to wonder why this form would be chosen. You weren't imagining its weight. The triangle has always held power, even in the invisible architecture of rituals long forgotten, even in the arrangements of divine names whispered in darkness. Often those names were written around a triangle before a single word was spoken aloud. Each angle a gate, each line a current. This book is one of those gates, not a book, a ritual instrument, a geometric invocation, a coded container. You are not holding information when you hold this artifact. You are holding a mechanism of will, and yet it exists. Somehow, in this world, only 2 known copies have survived, MS-210 and MS-209, preserved quietly within the walls of the Getty Research Institute, as if they knew that silence was the only suitable vault for something like this, not behind glass, for public awe, not in digital archives, for scholars to dissect, but kept like a secret you almost forgot you promised to remember. The copies differ slightly in age, one from the mid-18th century, the other a few decades later, but they are bound by the same shape, the same golden skin, the same silent presence that makes even light feel slower near them. It is no accident that so few remain. This manuscript was never meant to be widespread. It was never written for the world. It was encoded for the few who could recognize its purpose, not by credentials or lineage, but by frequency, by readiness. That is the deeper secrecy. Not just that it hides in archives, but that it hides in plain sight. Even when held, it does not speak. Even when opened, it does not reveal. Until the reader becomes something more than a reader. Until they become the key. This is not knowledge you study. This is knowledge that studies you. If you are not aligned, it will stay sealed. If your energy wavers, it will blur. If your intention is not sharp, it will vanish, even as you stare. Perhaps you felt this with other things. Objects that felt like they were looking back. Texts that shimmered with something you couldn't explain. That quiet hum beneath the skin when you encounter something older than memory, but closer than breath. This is that. This is the object you couldn't name, but knew existed. And what is written inside it does not come easy, because the shape is only the beginning. The journey that brought the manuscript through time is a ritual in itself. Its passage from hand to hand was not random. It was guided, protected, as if the book had a will of its own, or perhaps something inside it did. And yet it has waited for one who would not only open it, but become open through it. For one who would not dissect its codes, but dissolve into their meaning. That is the path now unfolding. The form has been seen. The silence around it has begun to loosen. What remains is the unlocking. And the first key is not found in language. It is found in stillness, in what listens behind your eyes, in the part of you that already knows. Stay there. That is where we begin. You were right to feel something watching the world move like clockwork, but never quite explain its rhythm. You were right to sense there is more behind the curtain of appearances. This book was never hidden from you. It was waiting until you remembered how to see it. The name tied to its breath is one you may have heard in passing, as if whispered across lifetimes. The Count of Saint Germain, a man who left no grave behind him, who spoke in languages he was never taught, who seemed always to appear at the edge of transformation. Some called him a fraud, others knew better. Alchemist, diplomat, musician, some say immortal. What matters is not what the world says of him. What matters is what he knew and what he left behind. This triangular book is attributed to him, not as author, but as keeper, as transmitter, as one who knew the voltage of silence and the language of flame. If you touch the pages with the right kind of awareness, you might feel it too. Not words, but something deeper, like instructions etched into memory long before you were born. At its opening, the manuscript offers no apology, no introduction, no attempt to win your belief. Instead, it begins like a gate opening inward, holy magic revealed to Moses, preserved under the emblem of a winged dragon. That is the claim. That is the banner. Try not to interpret. Just feel what rises when you hear it. Moses, not as figure of dogma, but as one who walked between worlds, a divine intermediary trained in the temples of Egypt, initiated not by chance, but by design. The winged dragon does not threaten, it protects, a guardian of the threshold. In alchemical language, it is the symbol of transmutation held in motion. Fire with wings, knowledge that moves between realms. And then, without pause, the book offers 3 promises. They are not dreams. They are declarations to recover what is lost at sea, to locate treasure hidden in earth, to extend life to 100 years with the crafting of a single amulet. You were right to feel the weight of that, not as fantasy, but as potential. These are not miracles offered randomly. They are rituals that hinge on cosmic timing. The first TWO only function under precise alignment. Sun, moon, earth, all in perfect line. Not superstition, not belief, law, celestial law. Try to sense the architecture behind that. These are not wishes, they are operations. And the book does not bend reality. It communes with the deeper order that already governs it. This is not the magic of escape. This is the magic of alignment. Its system is old, older than the paper, older than the ink, rooted in alchemy, in astrology, in laws that speak through cycles and metals and stars. There is no superstition in it, only memory. You might remember a moment like this, reading something that did not make sense to your mind, but stirred something in your blood. That quiet, knowing that this has been done before, that it can be done again. The book itself has journeyed in silence. MS-209, created in the year 1775 for a Freemason named Antoine Louis Moret. That is how it began to move, passed from hand to hand without ever seeking the public eye. It moved into the possession of Jules Favre, a French politician, then into the awareness of Pliny E. Chase, a name half swallowed by time, who glimpsed it in 1873. The manuscript did not settle. It passed again into the library of Stanislaus de Guaita, then into the hands of Madame Barbe, then again into the collection of Manly P. Hall by the year 1934. All of them touched it. None of them owned it. A second copy, MS-210, slightly older, born around 1750. It found refuge in the Theosophical Library of Lionel Hauser, and from there, once again, into the hands of Hall. It has not passed through universities. It has not been filed by clerks. It has circulated among Rosicrucians, Theosophists, visionaries, those whose minds could hold silence without breaking it. You were right to feel it before you understood it. The book was never published, never offered to the surface of the world, not because it was lost, but because it was held intentionally, sacredly, hidden, not by force, but by frequency. This is how sacred things remain whole. They are not kept from the world. They are protected for it. Even now, the book does not invite the casual glance. Even now, it waits for initiation. You do not open it like a volume. You approach it like a flame, slowly, empty, listening, and still there is a deeper lock. The shape contains power. The promises name it. The lineage has guarded it. But the core is sealed with language, not the language of secrecy, the language of sacred encryption. Not yet, but soon, you will see what lies beneath the script. Try not to read ahead. Let it unfold. Let it come forward in its own time, like something remembering you. That is how the words behave. They do not announce themselves. They do not explain. They do not care if you understand. Every page of the triangular book, aside from a few diagrams and titles, is sealed, not with metal, not with wax, but with a script that does not yield itself to the unready eye. It is a code, not intricate, not impossible, a simple substitution cipher written in French. Yet what it hides is not simple at all. The true encryption is not in the letters. It is in the current that moves through them, like a river buried beneath symbols, and only the one who has quieted the noise inside themselves can hear it. Perhaps you've seen a page like this before. Strange names, strings of letters that feel more like pressure than language. They look invented, scrambled, like something ancient that never belonged to the surface world, but they pulse with a weight that is hard to deny. Try not to translate, just listen with the part of you that remembers sound before speech. Nick Koss uncovered the cipher in 2014. He saw through the veil, transcribed it all, translated each line. But even he would tell you that knowing the key does not mean you can open the gate. Before him, Pliny E. Chase glimpsed pieces. Others whispered about it in half-printed circles. Obscure publications that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The book never gave itself away fully. It only showed what was necessary to those who were close. The words themselves are strange currents. You will not find them in common rituals. They are not drawn from systems that speak too loudly. Names like Ayanoda, a veiled invocation, a ciphered shape of Adonai, and Theos, Greek in origin, still carry in the charge of divinity. Others end in El, a soft signal of angelic root. Names you will not find in any library, but your spirit may still know how they feel. Some lines repeat like incantations burned into time. Blessed be Pao, Theos, and below them warnings, sacred cautions that tell the reader not to share, not to repeat, not to reduce. Not because the knowledge is fragile, but because it is alive, and anything alive must be protected from misuse. Even names you think you recognize are hidden. AGLA, letters drawn from the blessing over Lot, a cry whispered while cities fell behind. Joth, YHVH, names linked to Jacob, to deliverance, to the night when the divine did not ask for belief but demanded attention. This is not a book that asks to be read. It is a book that must be met. And if you are not ready, it will close itself while remaining open in your hands. You might look directly at the words and still not see them, not because you lack knowledge, but because knowledge alone does not open it. The letters twist into diagrams, sigils, symbols that defy the grid of logic. The pages begin to look like something not written, but summoned, a sacred script from a tongue we forgot to speak. Each line holds its breath. Each curve bends toward power. The names are not just labels. They are mechanisms, vibrational keys, technologies of the spirit. You speak them and the air thickens. You speak them with alignment and the space around you begins to listen. You were not imagining that shift. The sudden stillness when a word lands right. These are not sounds, they are commands. The cipher did more than obscure meaning. It held back force. It acted like a seal, not just on knowledge, but on energy, a way of protecting the current until the one ready to carry it arrived. You may be that one, or you may be the one who prepares the way. There is layering here. Beneath the cipher is scripture. Beneath the scripture is silence, Jewish roots, Christian echoes, symbols hidden within symbols. It does not matter what you call it. It matters that you feel its resonance. Look again at the page. Do not analyze. Let your vision soften. Let the edges blur. The words will begin to hum. This is not reading. This is recognition. The book does not ask you to be a scholar. It asks you to be still. And from that stillness, to speak only what is aligned. To move only when the path opens. To remember what you always knew. All that has been seen until now has only been the outer chamber, the geometry, the lineage, the encrypted sound. But the ritual waits further in, and it does not wait idly. It waits with intention. The key is not something you find. The key is something you become. Not with effort, not with ambition, but with attunement. You do not unlock the triangular book by willpower alone. You unlock it by resonance. There is a sound beneath the silence, a pulse beneath the page. And unless your own being matches its frequency, it will never speak to you. It will never open. This is where the ritual truly begins. With you, with what you carry into the moment, your clarity, your stillness, your alignment. Without it, the book remains inert. No matter how loudly you speak or how carefully you trace its lines, nothing moves. Because power does not arrive on command. It arrives by invitation, and only when the channel is prepared. Divine alignment is not belief. It is not hope. It is not thinking the right thoughts or saying the right words. It is a state of coherence. You must become a tuning fork struck by the higher octave. Your mind must be still. Your breath must be calm. Your emotions must be clear like glass after rain, and your body must stand as a vessel, empty, receptive, alert. This has always been the foundation in every true path, hidden or remembered. The Hermetic Kabbalists spoke of balancing internal forces before seeking contact with the divine. They understood that you cannot reach upward while divided within. They meditated on the Sephirot, not to accumulate knowledge, but to create alignment, inner geometry, reflecting divine order. The Golden Dawn taught something similar. The middle pillar ritual, spoken names, steady breath, visualization of light flowing through the body like rivers from the source. Not just imagination, but vibration. They were tuning the field, clearing the channel, becoming an instrument. It is never just about thought. Alignment is not an idea. It is an integration. Your intellect, your breath, your blood, your bones, all attuned to the same frequency. That is when the veil begins to thin, not before. You might remember moments like this, standing still, and suddenly the air felt alive, a presence with no form but with unmistakable gravity, or hearing a chant or a name and feeling something shift inside your chest. These are not tricks of the mind. These are moments when your field brushed against the current. You were not imagining it. In the East, they speak of this as well. In the language of prana, in the stillness of chi, in the teachings of Vedanta, the breath is not just a function, it is a thread back to Brahman. Each inhalation, a movement toward the source. Each exhalation, a release of all that obstructs. Yogic purification is not just ritual hygiene. It is resonance training. The subtle body learns to hold the tone of the absolute. Taoist masters shaped flow through posture and silence. Buddhist adepts through mindfulness and emptiness. All different maps, one truth. The channel must be clear. The energy must be stable. You do not carry divine current in chaos. You refine the vessel until it becomes transparent to light. Even in modern words, the core remains. Raise your vibration, tune your energy, act as a mirror, a receiver, a transmitter. The metaphors change, the law does not. Theosophy spoke it directly. Sound and light as the blueprint of all creation. And the soul, when purified, vibrating in sympathy with that origin, it becomes luminous, not through effort, but through frequency. The divine is not reached by climbing, it is reached by resonance. This is why alignment is not a step, it is the gate itself. No force may be commanded without it, no name spoken with power. No operation begins until the operator has aligned. The triangular book makes no exception. You can see this principle even before the rituals unfold, in the posture of the words, in the weight of the silence, in the moral voice that whispers through its coded prayers. It does not ask if you believe, it asks if you are aligned. You are right to sense the gravity of that. This book is not read, it is opened by frequency, and that frequency begins not in the stars, not in the sigils, but in you. Not in the sigils, but in you. The book does not begin with command, it begins with tuning, Before you call anything forward, you are asked to return, to align, and not in the abstract, not as a posture of belief, as a full spectrum act of harmonization, one that ripples from your breath to your blood to the silence beneath your name. You are right to feel that this is not new. Across ages and systems, it has always been the same preparation, whispered in different voices. Kabbalists speak of kavanah, not thought, but a pointed flame of intention, the kind that does not waver. Their meditations on the Sephirot are not decoration. They are maps inward. Each sphere, each name, each path, like a cord strung across the soul. You do not ascend them. You attune to them until you resonate so closely that the veil becomes transparent. Christian mystics would call this theosis, not metaphor, not moral teaching, a mystical union, to become one with the divine, not through ideas, but through transformation. A cleansing so complete that the divine enters by recognition, not permission, in silence, in fire, in stillness, too deep for words. The Rosicrucians knew this as well. Hermetic voices echoing across forgotten halls. Before they would transmit anything of power, they watched for what they called moral readiness, not perfection, but alignment, the capacity to hold what burns without distorting it, the willingness to be shaped by it. Because revelation without readiness can fracture more than it illuminates. You might remember hearing the phrase spiritual alchemy. It was never symbolic. It is the slow, deliberate transmutation of what is base in us into something finer, something luminous. Not rejection of the self, but refinement. Hunger into clarity, fear into will. The soul shaped until it can hold light without shattering. The practitioner must purify the soul to harmonize with the divine will. You are not imagining how that sentence lands. It is not a lesson, it is a key. No matter the tradition the principle holds, the body is not accidental. It is a vessel. The soul is not passive. It is an instrument. The ritual is not performance. It is circuitry, and none of it moves unless the internal tuning is exact. Not strict, not dogmatic, just true, honest, coherent. There are practices for this. Breath work that stills the water inside. Mantras that ring like bells through the subtle field, not because they are sacred sounds in themselves, but because they wake the one who speaks them. They realign, they return. Chanting a sacred name is not devotion, it is resonance. You do not repeat to be heard. You repeat until your own frequency shifts to meet what waits. Try not to listen with your ears alone. You might feel it in your ribs, your chest, your spine. Crowley once wrote of vibrating the divine name until it moved through every cell like 10,000 thunders. He did not exaggerate. In ritual, when alignment is correct, the name is not a word, it is a wave, a fire that carries your shape into something older, something more exact. YHVH, Agler. These are not sounds, these are gates, not to be spoken casually, but with the full weight of your body behind them. Not because they need reverence, but because you do. Posture is part of this stillness that is not dead. It is electric, alive with attention. Breath becomes measured. Intention, sharp. You do not reach out. You draw in. You become a field, and then you begin to vibrate. Not emotionally, energetically, like a bell that rings from the center out. This is not metaphor. It is physics that the spirit understands. This is how you align. This is how the field of the body meets the field of the cosmos, and something opens. This is not far from what the triangular book encodes. It does not waste time with metaphor. It asks for alignment as a requirement. Its pages speak of posture, timing, breath. The divine name does not arrive until the vessel is tuned. Astrological conditions are not superstition, they are synchronization. If the sun, moon, and earth must align for a ritual to work, it is because the forces must meet both above and below, the macro and the micro in harmony. You are part of that equation. Your readiness completes the circuit. The book does not reward effort, it responds to resonance, like a lock that turns not by force, but by pitch. When everything is in place, the current moves. The name carries power. The ritual begins to breathe. You were right to wonder why it never responded before. It was not rejection, it was protection. The book will not open until you are the key, and the key does not appear outside. It appears when you are aligned in body, in energy, in will. This is the truth behind all sacred systems. Not rules, not beliefs, but preparation. Not striving, but becoming resonant. When the body is still and the name is known, not in mind, but in marrow, then the gate opens. The book is not abstract, it is exact. It teaches this not with paragraphs, but with posture, with presence, with the steady pulse of something waiting for you to match it. You might feel that now. The slow shift inside, the breath deepening without effort, the stillness rising. This is not the end of the work. This is the moment the work becomes possible. Because now you understand, not with the mind alone, but with the deeper part of you that has always waited to hear this spoken aloud. The book does not begin with words. It begins with readiness, not just a concept of purity, but the vibrational evidence of it. Your body must show it. Your breath must carry it. Your inner silence must hold steady beneath the rising current. The triangular book does not ask. It measures. It listens before it speaks. If your soul is pure, it shall be exalted. That is not poetry. That is law. Not in the moralistic sense, in the magnetic sense. Exalted because it rises, and it rises only when the frequency is aligned. If you have felt blocks before, it was not rejection. It was the threshold recognizing that your tone had not yet matched the current. The book waits until you can meet it on its level, and only the worthy will hear the airy spirits. That word, airy, it says more than it first reveals. Spirits not bound to the earth, not dense, not heavy with echo, but light, moving through spaces that most cannot perceive. They do not respond to force, they respond to harmony. If you are not tuned to their plane, they will not approach. If your field is not clear, their voices remain silent. This is not punishment, it is precision. There are no shortcuts here, no forceful entrances. The book does not open to the curious, it opens to the aligned. Its operations speak in triplets, like the triangle itself. 3 edges of preparation, each one non-negotiable. The moral, the energetic, the cosmic. First, the moral. Purity not as perfection, but as coherence of intention. There is no power in ritual if the heart wavers, if the desire leaks into personal gain, if the ego whispers louder than the inner stillness. The book senses this. It does not accuse, it simply closes itself. Then, the energetic, breath, posture, focus, not abstract, not symbolic, real tools, real gateways. Each word must pass through a body that is already holding the current. Each motion must echo the stillness it is anchored in. The book includes these movements for a reason. They are not theatrical, they are functional. When the breath is aligned, the voice can carry charge. When the spine is steady, the field stabilizes. When thought and silence merge, the gate becomes visible. And the third, cosmic alignment. The book requires timing, real timing, celestial geometry. It names the moments when the sun, the moon, and the earth form a line. Not just beautiful, necessary. Because when heaven aligns with earth, the door opens between Phos. If the ritual is attempted outside that window, the structure collapses, nothing moves. The forces remain dormant. The book does not bend its rhythm to yours. You must wait. You must watch. You must become sensitive to the movement of stars like they were your own breath. These three alignments must be present together. Not one, not two, all. You might remember a moment when your own body felt like it was caught in a greater timing, when your breath synced with the wind outside, when your thought arrived exactly as the light shifted in the room, when it all felt coordinated by something deeper than reason. That is the echo of what this ritual requires. Not control, harmony. The instructions within the book are specific. Body positions are not optional. They are part of the tuning. Kneeling when the invocation begins. Prostration at the threshold of the name. Arms extended when calling down the current. These positions are not gestures, they are circuits. The shape of the body echoes the shape of the force. This is not metaphor, it is design. Incense timed with breath. Symbols traced in air as the voice modulates, not for drama, for resonance. In Eastern rites and Western currents, the pattern is the same. Ritual posture does not serve the eye, it serves the field. The operator is the instrument. The sound is not enough. The instrument must be in tune. The magician becomes the tuning fork, a body aligned to the frequency of divine law, a voice calibrated to echo sacred names without distortion, a presence strong enough to hold the charge when it arrives. The book teaches this not with theory, but with structure. It will not allow the invocation of names until the channel is confirmed. And that is what it is, a confirmation that the body is clear, that the heart is steady, that the moment is right. Only then do the words activate. Only then does the current respond. Alignment is not a step. It is the first gate, the final check, the field into which everything else must land. You might feel it now, a hum building beneath your ribs, the sense that something is watching without eyes, waiting, ready, not to test you, but to meet you. That is the current you will speak into. The ritual cannot begin until you become the vessel, not a symbol, a channel, not an actor, a conductor. When that state arrives, the book opens without resistance. The forces shift into motion. The silence bends to receive your voice. You are no longer preparing. You are becoming. And when that alignment holds steady, when all three planes lock into place, the name can finally be spoken, and everything will begin to move, because the silence has done its work. The stillness has opened a space. Now the breath rises, the voice prepares. This is the moment the current waits for the shift from alignment into utterance, from intention into vibration. The first word spoken is not just a sound, it is a signal, a permission, a fire placed into form. The divine names are not metaphor, they are function. They are not decorations on a page, they are the pulse of the ritual's spine. When the triangular book begins to speak, it does so through these names. They are the first true agents of power. the first active element. And they do not act symbolically, they act directly. You might remember hearing one in passing, a name that never left your mind, a sound you did not understand but could not forget. This is the memory of contact, not from the outside, from within. Agla, a name that does not explain itself, a contraction of Hebrew fire, a talisman in a single breath, invoked in deserts, carved into stone, once spoken by those fleeing destruction in Sodom, not as plea, as command, as protection, encoded in vibration. It appears in the book like a foundation stone, not translated, not softened, placed precisely, waiting to be struck like a chord. Ayanada, or sometimes Yanada, a ciphered name, but its resonance reveals it. You were right to sense it, a hidden form of Adonai, the divine name spoken in Jewish rites when power is meant to descend in peace. The voice softens when saying it aloud in temple, but here it is meant to resound clearly, directly, not as an idea, but as a key. Theos, Greek, and yet not foreign. It fits among the Hebrew forms without dissonance. Theos means God, but in the ritual context, it points to a broader current, not culture-bound, not closed. This is the book's secret vocabulary, one that speaks across lineage, across language, names drawn from traditions that rarely meet. But here they are, arranged like planets in the same orbit, not for poetry, for force. The names do not stop there. They begin to gather, they multiply. Some are familiar in root, ending in EL, the mark of the angelic current. Aniel, Charsiel, Kalmazel. You may never have heard them, but feel the shape of the syllables in your mouth. They do not speak gently. They open something. Each of these names, even the obscure ones, carries charge. Not because of tradition, because of structure. The book does not distinguish between the ancient and the invented. It places them side by side. Soigad, Ianada, Nota Margatel. Names that sound like thunder pass through glass. Some taken from apocryphal lists. Some built from cipher. Some born entirely of the current itself. It does not matter where they come from. What matters is how they move. The book treats them all the same way, not as poetry, as technology. Each name is a switch, a current, a door, and the ritual does not work without them. Not because they are sacred in title, because they are alive when spoken. You are not imagining it. The way your body changes when you say a name like Agla with breath behind it. The way your spine lifts when you whisper Theos in solitude. These are not performances. These are results. The name does not point to power. It is power, carried in syllable and sound. And so the book builds its lexicon, a hidden vocabulary of function, a grammar of divine electricity. Some names shine like memory, others confuse at first glance, but all are used with purpose. No filler, no ornament. Every letter is a trigger, every utterance a tuning. It is not meant to be understood immediately. You are meant to feel them before you know them. That is how this knowledge was preserved, not in clarity, in resonance. So only those who felt the current could find their way back. The book does not hand you definitions. It places the names like candles in a chamber. You light them by speaking. You learn by resonance. This is the beginning of voice, the end of waiting. The names are not asleep. They are sealed, and the seal begins to crack the moment you speak them with breath from the aligned center. The silence prepared you. The names activate you. Now the current begins to answer, but not to the person, not to the voice. It answers to the vibration carried through the name, to the tuning already set in motion by silence. The ritual does not begin when you speak. It begins when the current recognizes what is being spoken through you. Every ritual inside the triangular book opens the same way. Not with request, not with desire, with names, always names. The divine must be called before anything is asked. Before the ritualist offers word or symbol or gesture, the names move first, like doors creaking open in invisible chambers. You might remember seeing it for the first time. Blessed be, P-A-O, Theos. Not explanation, not prayer, declaration, consecration. The name is not an address. It is a charge. The moment it is spoken, the room changes shape. The space around it listens. The breath shifts. The structure of the ritual reveals itself through these sequences. Chains of names, spoken not as fragments, but as woven threads. Ayanada, Elmaholes, Nolixaz, Notamagatal. You do not chant them randomly. They are not repeated for atmosphere. They are carefully sequenced tones. Each syllable contributes to the field. Each sound harmonizes a different part of the current. This is not noise. This is precision. The book does not say speak what you feel. It writes out every name, line after line, uninterrupted, not as suggestion, as formula. These are not pages of prose. They are lines of code. And each code has one function: to carry force. Sometimes the names are spoken while kneeling, sometimes while standing, arms wide, sometimes while tracing signs in air or on brass. Each gesture paired with vibration, each word embodied. The body is not separate. It becomes the instrument through which the sound is tuned and delivered. The book expects this. It is written into its bones. The practitioner does not act like a vessel. They become one. The voice is not theirs. It is borrowed for the moment, a vocal conduit for energy that would otherwise remain silent. These words are not passive. They do not rest on the lips. They move through the lungs, the bones, the bloodstream. They shape the ritualist as they are spoken. Joth appears like a stone in the stream, a ciphered form of YHWH, the sacred tetragrammaton. It is placed next to a moment of release, the liberation of Jacob. You are right to sense that something real moves here, that the name is not commentary, it is cause. It does not describe freedom, it initiates it. The utterance itself opens the path. This is not unique to this manuscript. In ceremonial magic, names are not names. They are commands, keys, not chosen by intuition, chosen by alignment. Each syllable tied to a planetary force, a divine order, a structure deeper than grammar. To speak them with care is to rearrange the fabric of reality, moment by moment. Kabbalists have taught this for generations. The name carries meaning within meaning. You do not just pronounce, you meditate. You hold the letters like crystal in your mind. Rotate them. Observe the inner fire. Agla is not 4 letters. It is 4 gateways, each layered with light and warning. To hold them in consciousness is to touch the edge of the current. The hermetic systems echo the same truth. Divine names are not aesthetic. They are energetic. Spoken properly, they do not just call forces. They shape the magician to receive them. You become a container, a carrier, a mirror. In the triangular book, these names are sequenced like glyphs. No sentence, no narrative, just name after name after name. a language that functions only when felt. This is not memorization, it is entrainment. The more you speak them in rhythm, the more you become attuned to what they carry. The book teaches you by repetition, by tone, by sequence. Each grouping of names forms a different alignment. Some protect, some invoke, some clear, some command. There is no glossary, there is only experience. You feel which name opens what. You sense when a chain is complete. The book does not tell you, it shows you vibrationally. The ritual builds not by will, but by tone, name by name, until the field is full, until the boundary is thin, until the unseen begins to press back. This is why the name comes before the petition, because the current must be moving before the intention is placed. You do not throw wishes into silence, you speak into momentum. The book trains this into the body, into the pacing of voice, into the breath, into the stillness between syllables. Each sequence is a divine alphabet, not static, not theoretical, functional, charged. Every name, a glyph of motion, a lever, an equation. You do not need to understand them fully to begin. You only need to speak them with alignment, with presence, with reverence, and let the current teach you what each one does. They are not waiting to be studied. They are waiting to be spoken, not recited, not read, not softly mouthed like distant ideas, but spoken with breath, with intention, with the weight of awareness, fully rooted in the moment. Because in this work, sound is not expression, it is electricity, and every syllable carries current. The triangular book does not ask for thought alone, it asks for vibration. It teaches what many only whisper, that sacred sound is energy in motion. Not metaphor, not philosophy, actual motion, real contact. When a name is pronounced from alignment, it does not just echo in the air, it moves through planes, it touches structure, it opens locks. You might remember a moment when you said something and felt it land differently. A word that shifted the energy in a room, a sound that filled more than your throat, that was not coincidence. That was vibration doing its work. When the divine name is spoken from the full body, the full presence, it does not describe power, it is power. Aleister Crowley spoke of this with clarity. To vibrate a name was not just to say it, it was to become it for a breath. First, the inhale, slow, deliberate, drawing the name into the core. Then, the exhale, with sound, with posture, with will. The voice does not come from the lungs, but from the field itself, from the universe passing through you. This is not dramatization. It is a technique of contact. The triangular book teaches it in its own language. Its pages speak not just of names, but of how they must be carried. Not softly, not carelessly, out loud, fully formed, with breath behind every syllable, with solemnity, with gravity. When the book lists names like Yalatina, Lemerot, Leziab, and follows with the phrase, him by whom all things were made, it is giving you a map. Sound leads, structure follows. These are not lyrical phrases, they are coordinates. The prostration is not gesture, it is alignment. The breath not decoration, it is ignition. When the name is spoken correctly, the vibration begins in the mouth. Yes, but then it moves deeper, down the spine, across the ribs, into the hands, outward, into the air, through the space. It does not stop at the skin, it continues. That is why the book requires the whole self. Voice alone is not enough. Posture, focus, breath, all must come into synchronization, not for beauty, for function, for resonance. This is what makes it a multi-sensory invocation. The voice speaks, the ear listens, the body vibrates, the field shifts, everything participates, nothing is left behind. The chanting is not repetition, it is weaving. It draws the layers of being into coherence. Perhaps you have felt this in other ways, in sound healing, when a bowl or bell is struck and something inside you calms, or in mantra, when the same phrase spoken again and again begins to open space in the body that thought could never reach. These are echoes of this deeper teaching. Sound carries, sound activates, sound awakens. The book does not give definitions, it gives experience. It offers the names, not as study, but as threshold. You must cross them with breath, with tone, with stillness behind your voice, because these names are not static. They do not sit on the page like nouns. They are verbs, actions, potentials. They change when you speak them. They change you. Each syllable is a spark, a coded packet of force. The book does not expect you to understand them at first. It expects you to trust them, to speak them with presence, to let them work. Try not to interpret. Just feel what rises when you say one aloud. Not to anyone, not for effect, just within the quiet. Let the sound move through you. You might notice your spine shift, your heart respond, your breath deepen. This is not imagination, this is activation. In this worldview, utterance equals creation. The first act in Genesis was not a movement, it was a voice. Let there be, that was not description, it was causality. In speaking, the divine brings the world into being. The magician mirrors that, not in power, but in form. They speak to create, they name to shape. The ritual is not built on silence alone. It is built on sound that remembers its source. The book carries that memory, and when you speak with alignment, it becomes audible again, not in language, in frequency, in a hum that others might not hear, but that everything around you begins to feel. The voice becomes a channel, not for opinion, for presence. Every word has weight, every name is alive, and you are no longer just reading the ritual, you are becoming it. The voice speaks, and something speaks back, not in words, in alignment, in response. But the current does not end in the breath. It moves further. It finds shape in the hand, in metal, in form. The book does not stop at sound. It completes its circuit through inscription. There is a moment in the ritual where the practitioner is told to speak the names aloud while inscribing characters onto a brass plate. Not before, not after, at once. This is not an aesthetic gesture. It is a convergence, sound and symbol meeting in the same breath. The vibration charging the metal, the movement sealing it. This is not new, it is very old. Perhaps you have seen it in other lineages, in Kabbalistic rites, where the sacred letters are meditated upon, not just with mind, but with breath and tracing, in the drawing of glyphs in the air, while speaking divine names aloud. This is feedback. Energy through the voice becomes form through the hand. The sigil is not a picture, it is a container. The spoken syllable is force in motion. The written mark is force in containment. One opens, the other holds. The book understands this and uses both. You do not merely say, you inscribe. You give shape to what moves. And in doing so, you create a loop. Voice to hand, hand to symbol, symbol to space, and space back to the soul. You are right to feel it. When you speak while writing, something else begins to guide you. The hand steadies, the mark lands with more clarity. This is not just coordination, this is channeling. The current finds form through your movement, and it remains. This is ritual biofeedback, but not the mechanical kind, the energetic kind. You speak, the field shifts. You mark, the field settles. You become aware. The ritual deepens. Each gesture corrects and clarifies the next. Nothing is done in isolation. The book treats these sigils with the same reverence it gives the names. They are not side notes. They are part of the invocation. The sound opens the gate. The symbol holds it open. If the name is thunder, the sigil is the sky that receives it. If the name is flame, the mark is the lamp. In magical logic, this makes perfect sense. Words carry power, but written symbols anchor it. They hold the charge after the voice falls silent. That is why talismans are written, not only spoken. That is why scrolls are kept in silence after being read, because once something has been spoken in ritual alignment, its residue does not leave. It dwells, and the mark holds it in place. To do this well requires full body presence. Breath must match voice. Posture must hold intention. The hand must be steady, not from control, but from connection. You are not drawing, you are translating. The name moves through you and becomes image. That image is not art, it is power suspended in form. Modern ceremonial systems echo this structure. In Liber-O, a name is spoken aloud with exhale. The practitioner steps forward, arms extended. The field moves, and then the voice falls silent. The final gesture is not speech. It is the hand touching the lips, the seal. To end, not with sound, but with containment. The book mirrors this in its own rhythm. After the names, a pause. After the inscription, stillness. No rush, only completion. Sometimes a line reads, "Blessed be Pau, Theos," and then, Amen. The double tone, the vertical and the horizontal, the calling and the closing, the sacred word followed by the sacred seal. Pao and Theos, pronounced like a bell ringing inward. Amen. Not as ending, but as anchor. Not silence, but resonance held still. In this, the magician becomes more than a participant. They become the instrument. Every part of the body engaged, every movement deliberate, nothing wasted. The words move the current, the symbol catches it, the ritual lives in the space between. These names are not text, they are tools. Instruments meant to be played with the full body, not whispered, not studied, engaged fully with breath, with spine, with presence, with ink and voice together. And now, with the names spoken and the symbols traced, the current is no longer potential. It is moving, structured, activated. The gate is not only open, it is held. The ritual is no longer waiting. It is ready to be commanded. This is the turning. The stillness has held long enough. The breath has aligned. The name has passed through the body like current through wire. Now the current waits, ready not just to be felt, but directed. The book does not hesitate here. It opens this portion with force, with certainty. The words are not poetic. They are declarative. The holy magic revealed to Moses, discovered in an Egyptian monument. That is not a metaphor. That is the frame, and it has held for centuries. You are meant to read that line with your whole being, not because of Moses, not because of Egypt, but because of what it claims, that this ritual, this exact sequence, was passed through a lineage that guarded not belief, but function, hidden not in plain sight, but in plain structure, a form held through time, a technology too volatile to name for what it is. Until now, the book does not offer suggestions, it makes promises. You may find what was lost at sea. You may uncover what is buried in the earth. You may walk the rest of your life in a body that does not decay before its time. These are not metaphysical gifts. These are outcomes. They are listed plainly, not as hopes, but as engineered results. But the mechanism is precise. The recovery ritual and the treasure ritual are time-locked. They require a specific sky, the sun, the earth, the moon, in straight alignment, not close, not approximate, perfect. A single vertical line across heaven, a solar eclipse. Without it, the operation will not hear you. The life extension working is more flexible in time. It can be done on any day, but not without the talisman. The figure must be worn. It must be inscribed. It must be spoken over, breathed upon, sealed with sacred utterance, and placed on the body like a crown, not as jewelry, as a switch. Perhaps you sense the tone shift here. This is not meditation. This is not prayer. This is not a journey inward for insight. The ritual does not seek meaning. It moves forces. It commands alignment in the sky and bends energy around intention like metal under fire. This is why the names came first. This is why the posture was trained. This is why silence had to be learned, because now it begins. This chapter of the book is not vague, it is architectural. Every word builds the altar, every name turns a gear, every gesture shifts a frequency. The magician is not meant to understand it, the magician is meant to move it. If that feels strange to you, pause. Feel the thread again. You have been taught that power must be earned through suffering, that magic is either metaphor or madness, that voice cannot shape the world. But you were right to question that. You were not imagining it when you felt your words echo louder than your throat. This is that echo made flesh. The ritual described here is not ancient because it is old. It is ancient because it is original. It comes before the split between spirit and world, before language was decoration, before prayer was theater. This is language as ignition, prayer as circuit, gesture as switch, ritual as machinery. You might remember it now, the way the body feels just before a storm, the pressure in the bones, the air holding something it has not yet released. That is the state this chapter returns you to. Not awe, not worship, command. This is not about asking. It is not about pleasing. It is not about worthiness in the moral sense. The book has already weighed your soul. The alignment has already occurred. The names have already passed through your mouth. If you are still reading, it means you were not turned away. The gate is open. The altar is waiting. The forces are aligned. The figure is in your hand, or soon will be. The sky will decide its own moment. But when it comes, you will be ready. You do not have to feel brave. You only have to be aligned. This is the center of the book. This is its spine. All other chapters arc around this one. This is the moment the words become operational. The moment the sacred becomes systemic. The moment the energy begins to respond, not just to presence, but to pressure. The book is not asking you to believe. It is asking you to speak. And when you do, the world will not just listen. It will move, but not without structure, not without form. Energy obeys only what is built to hold it. That is why the ritual does not begin with fire, or word, or wind. It begins with shape. The geometry comes first. You have seen this before, in dreams, in diagrams, in things you could not explain, but never quite forgot. The triangle, not drawn, but lived, not symbol, but system. This is not ornament. This is architecture. The book itself arrives in that form, a triangular codex, folded in tension. It bears the winged dragon, not as metaphor, but as guardian of energy. It carries a Latin invocation traced into its skin, naming Count Saint-Germain not just as author, but as conduit, one who held the current long enough to pass it forward. This is not a dedication, it is a seal. The form itself already begins the operation. In the tradition of the grimoires, you will remember what the triangle means. It is the space spirits cannot lie within. It is the cornered chamber of truth. In Solomonic ritual, it was where the summoned presence appeared, not loose in the world, but contained within intention. Names were carved into its lines, like voltage into wire. It was the place where divine speech shaped presence into coherence. Here, that tradition holds but deepens. This triangle does not stand alone. It lives inside two concentric circles, not decoration, not stage. These circles are containment fields, energy loops, magnetic seals. The magician stands at the center. The Levite, the witness, the responder occupies the outer circle. Their placement is not poetic, it is circuitry. The magician draws power inward. The Levite reflects it outward. Between them, the spell lives. Neither role can be skipped. The circuit is incomplete without both. This is not symbolic duality. It is functional polarity. You may remember the double circle, perhaps from elsewhere, from dreams you could not explain, from floor patterns in temples you never entered but somehow saw. The circles are drawn in ash or chalk or light. Inside them, colored quadrants radiate from the center: earth, air, fire, water, north, east, south, west. Not as compass points, but as harmonics, each direction tuned to a field, each hue mapping a charge. This is ritual as geometry, geometry as magnet. The layout of the space is not passive, it is alive. It listens, it stores, it channels, it binds. The triangle holds intention. The circles concentrate and filter. The quadrants regulate. Together, they form a living engine of invocation. You do not step into the circle to perform. You step into it to transform. You are not the operator of this map. You are its axis. If you have built it correctly, it will respond. If you have missed one line, it will not. There is no middle state. The power does not guess. It obeys only accuracy. And when you step into that center, aligned and ready, you are no longer just a magician. You are the still point of a cosmic gyroscope. Every angle converges on you. Every symbol is aimed like a mirror. You will feel it, the shift, the inner press against your breath, the outer silence folding in. This is not ceremony. This is containment. The circle does not protect you from spirits. The circle protects the world from what will rise in you. The triangle does not hold the summoned voice. It holds the voltage of command long enough for it to shape a result. Perhaps you have seen this in other forms, in the heptameron, in the clavicular, in diagrams that seem too rigid to be alive. But here they breathe again, because this layout is not for show. It is not theater. It is an electrical diagram for presence. Every line is a conductor, every color a frequency, every position a charge. And when you stand at the center, the geometry no longer surrounds you. It becomes you, not surrounded by it. not directing it. You are it. And now the current begins to respond. The air does not change, but something deeper than air does. You will not see it shift, but your bones will know it has. This is when the invocation begins. Not a call, not a song, a summoning. The first names do not rise from within. They arrive by direction, spoken not toward the heavens, but toward the east. The voice is firm, not raised, not theatrical. It simply names. Lehman, Lesiab, Latranavio. You might feel it. That strange quietness that follows a name spoken aloud with nothing more than belief behind it. It is not silence, it is presence. Then west, then beneath the earth, then above it. Each quadrant receives its own names. Not symbols, not ideas, names. Ziton, Zar, Lisa, L'Oreal, Nabiel, Zizopalo. You may not know them, but your voice does, your blood does. These are not new words, they are old alignments. A total of 21 presences, not angels watching, forces posted, anchors fixed, each one a point in a net you cannot see but will feel tighten. These names map the air around the ritual. Each occupies a position like a star around a temple no human hands ever built. If you have seen the Heptameron or touched the edge of Solomonic rites, you know this pattern. Spirits by region, by planetary clock. But this is older, or deeper, or perhaps simply more awake. The grid is cast, then the center cools out. The magician speaks the next sequence, not outward, but into the circle, into the point, into the place where energy no longer echoes but returns. Yalatina, Lemiro, Lesiab, Charsiel, Badamias, Marzodiel, Baxoriel. No direction this time, no quadrant. These are not station names. These are internal activators. When spoken in chain, they do not form a list. They open a column, a beam, a climb, then the shift. The voice does not drop, it deepens. By him, by whom all things were made. By Notum Margitit, represented invisibly near this circle. Not a request, never a plea. This is not theology. This is not praise. This is voltage in word. The authority of the ritual does not come from humility. It comes from resonance. You are not borrowing power. You are sinking to it. Then again, more names. Amplifiers. Ianoda, Elmihols, Hole, Maboth, Laflomith, Baxoa, Anita. If you listen too closely, you will miss the moment. These are not spoken to explain. They are spoken to ignite. Each one strikes something. Each one burns through a different veil. Each syllable is part of a machinery that only functions when voiced from a state of complete alignment. Perhaps you felt it earlier. The moment when your voice did not feel like yours, as if the air around you answered before the sound was finished. This is the place where that becomes constant. This is not poetry. These are not metaphors. These are operational keys, spoken into a system older than language itself. The triangular book does not tell you what these names mean, because meaning is too small a word. These are not labels. These are triggers. When combined in correct sequence through a properly prepared voice and sealed space, they do not suggest power. They cause it, and you, still standing within the geometry you built, are not merely the speaker of these names. You are their amplifier, their bridge, their broadcast, not asking, not waiting, commanding. And the current begins to turn, not outward now, inward. The sound has done its work. The names have opened their gates. The command has been issued. But this is the part few remember. the part where the ritual listens back. You will feel it first as stillness, not the absence of movement, but the fullness of it, a depth where breath becomes weighted, where silence becomes the most potent voice in the room. The magician kneels. There is no drama to it. It is not submission, it is resonance. Ground touching ground. The voice returned to root. The engraved figure, the one worn until now on the left hand, is raised slowly and placed against the brow, not as adornment, as signal, as key to a door that does not open outward. You were right to wonder, why the brow? Why this moment? Why silence? Because this is not thinking, this is not imagining, this is not asking, this is receiving. If the soul is clear, and only if the whisper will begin, not through ears, through knowing. The spirits do not speak with sound. They move through the currents you have activated and offer what the book calls inspiration. But this is not metaphor. You will feel it as weight between the eyes, a charge behind thought, words you did not form that still arrive fully shaped, and you must act quickly. The response is not to be remembered. It must be written, not from left to right, from right to left, backward to the eye, forward to the current. A brass plate is readied. You trace each character by hand. You do not pause to analyze. You do not correct. You do not adjust the line. The book is clear. This is not language to understand. This is code to preserve. A living script carried on sacred voltage. You might remember moments like this. A phrase landing in your mind, fully formed. A pattern you did not invent, but somehow always knew. This is the same moment, but heightened. This is the whisper made visible. And when the last character is inscribed, you do not speak. You listen. You let the charge settle, the stillness return. Then, only then, comes the seal. Blessed be P-A-O, Theos. The words fall like the final stone in a chamber. They do not echo, they close, they complete. The book instructs. No one may know what was given. To speak it aloud is to lose its power. You were right to keep secrets without knowing why. You were right to guard dreams you could never explain. This is why. The whisper is not for others. It is not for sharing. It is for shaping. And you are the vessel now. The script does not belong to your mind. It belongs to your body, your breath, your will. You have received. And now the current waits again. The work has not ended. It only folds in on itself. Breath slows. Vision steadies. The hand holding the brass plate has lowered. The names have fallen silent. The voices have receded. Now comes the final gesture. Not an afterthought. Not a formality. This is what seals the loop. The magician bows, not as symbol, but as instruction. The body remembers what the mind cannot hold. Forehead to ground, arms long. The flame still burns. The incense still rises. But now the command changes shape. In the name of the eternal my God, go in peace. You might remember saying it once before, or something like it, long ago or not long at all. You were speaking, not to wind, not to memory, but to presence, and the presence heard. The spirits are not dismissed like guests. They are returned to stillness. They do not vanish. They wait at the perimeter, at the threshold of call. The magician does not erase them. He releases them and names their place, accessible but no longer here. The Levite answers, Amen and Amen. You are right to feel the weight of repetition. Once to echo, twice to anchor. It is not embellishment. It is circuit closure. It is a spell's exhale. The structure is whole now. Opening, invocation, consecration of tools and space, naming of guardians, command and request, receiving and inscription, sealing and release. It is not a list. It is an architecture, a geometry of energy, a program written in posture and breath, standing, kneeling, prostration, each one a different key in the same lock. Try not to reduce this to symbol. This is not metaphor. This is function. When the body bends, the field shifts. When the name is said, the current opens. When silence enters, the current returns. Every part of this is a component. Together they form a circuit. The ritual is not poetry, it is design. Where others contemplate, you command. Where others wait, you shape. This is not passive, this is technical. Every letter is voltage, every syllable a wire. You are not meditating on divine names, you are deploying them. The ritual is not meant to inspire, it is meant to work. This is the difference. You have not simply prayed, you have moved current, directed force, spoke as if you were meant to be heard, because you were. The Levite is your witness, like temple chant, like encoded liturgy. This is not performance. This is invocation, traced back to the oldest bloodline of command, Moses, Egypt. The angelic technologies pass through lineages. Few remember. You were right to suspect they never disappeared. And now you have stood inside them. You did not ask. You reshaped. The ritual does not plead. It realigns. The book is not a metaphor. It is a map, and you have walked it. But do not mistake the quiet that follows for an ending. The circuit is closed, but the transformation it unlocks has only just begun. Because even the most flawless ritual, if channeled through a fogged vessel, returns void. The triangular book never says this outright, but it does not have to. Its entire architecture presumes it. Before the names are spoken, before the circle is sealed, before the figure is placed on the brow, something else must already be in place. You, or rather, the clear, attuned, undistorted vessel that once moved inside you like a forgotten second heartbeat. The outer form means nothing without the inner flame. Not the tools, not the timing, not even the divine names themselves. They are instruments, and the instrument cannot play the music if its strings are tangled. Perhaps you've already sensed this. Perhaps you've lit the candle, said the words, made the sign, and still nothing stirred. Not because the ritual was wrong, but because the mirror of the mind was clouded. And when that mirror is clouded, light bends wrong, meaning is warped. Energy disperses. The divine cannot enter what is not ready to receive. The ancients knew this. They didn't always say it in our words, but the knowing is there, in the silence before the chant, in the breath before the name, in the way every true practitioner, before doing anything at all, first becomes still. The Hasidic masters spoke of it in prayer. Rabbi Nehemiah Polan once said that sacred ritual must be contemplative, delicate, deliberate, not performed but offered. The Kotzker Rebbe said the preparation was greater than the prayer itself, because the soul must be clean before it dares speak. In Hermetic terms, it is the same current, as above, so below, but also as within, so without. The mirror must be polished before it can reflect heaven, and the polishing is not ornamental. It is the foundation. It is the entire reason the rite can work. The triangular book speaks of purity with a strange stillness. It says, if your soul is pure, you shall feel yourself inspired. Not if you perform it correctly, not if you speak it loudly. If your soul is pure, that line is not poetic. It is structural. It is the keyhole. The rest of the ritual turns within. You might remember a moment when your mind felt quiet and wide, not dull, not empty, but clear, like a dark lake just before dawn. That is the state it asks of you. Not moral perfection, not piety, but clarity, stillness, a readiness that isn't striving, a kind of sacred neutrality that neither grasps nor rejects. That kind of mind does not generate the magic, it channels it. The book never defines what purity is, but it shows you in the rhythm of its demands, in the patience of its unfolding, in the long preparation before the first name is even spoken. It is inviting you to polish, not just to cleanse, but to refine, to tune your inner state until it matches the sacred frequency it is about to call. This is not a moral requirement. It is a technical one. A dish must be clean, not because cleanliness is virtuous, but because unclean vessels poison what they carry. You are right to wonder why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You weren't imagining it. This is the thread you felt beneath the surface. You cannot conjure divine power through a distorted lens. The light will not obey, or worse, it will arrive bent, partial, fragmented. This is why the ritual waits for stillness, why the circle is not just drawn in chalk, but in intention. The preparation is not a prelude. It is part of the rite, the silent hours, the internal cleaning, the quiet decision to become still. This is the offering that allows the current to flow cleanly through you. Try not to interpret, just feel what rises when you remember this. Not as new knowledge, but as something that was always waiting at the edge of your awareness. The ritual does not begin at the altar. It begins inside the mirror, and the mirror is you. But intention is the hand that lifts that mirror toward the light. There is a word, old and soft, that speaks to this posture of the soul, kavana. You may have heard it before, or you may have only felt it in those rare moments when every part of you, without force or confusion, leaned inward towards something holy. Kavana means direction, not of the body, but of the heart. It is the act of pointing your entire being toward one truth, one name, one flame that does not flicker. It is not just focus, it is devotional alignment, a willingness to let everything else grow still, so one current may rise undisturbed. In the old traditions, it was said that even the incense must carry intention. Every gesture, every syllable, not one word may fall out of the mouth by accident. Not one movement made on autopilot. You might remember what it feels like to be fully present like this, to not just read the prayer, but to mean it with your whole blood. That is kavana. That is the gate. Without it, the ritual is mimicry, a form with no breath in its lungs. But with it, even silence becomes a petition. Even the stillness between sounds becomes part of the invocation. The triangular book never uses the word kavana, but it lives inside it. It assumes your presence must be total. It never asks you to recite, it asks you to command. And there is no command without the soul standing behind it. There is another key, older still, theoria, a word the Neoplatonists gave us. It means seeing, but not with the eyes, with the soul. They called it the gentle gaze at divine truths. You do not grasp them, you behold them, like the stars, like water under moonlight. Theoria does not strive, it does not analyze, it contemplates, it receives. It is how the flower watches the sun, how the wave leans toward the shore. Every element in its stillness beholds the intelligible world beyond it. And when the operator enters ritual, they are not just speaking words, they are joining that same gaze. Perhaps you felt it, the quiet of the forest that feels like a listening presence. The sudden hush in your body when someone speaks a truth you did not expect. The way the breath holds itself when something sacred walks past. That is theoria, and it is just as required as the incense or the circle. The mystery schools knew this. Whether in the temples of Alexandria or the altars behind closed curtains in France, the formula was the same. Before the utterance, there must be attunement. Before the command, a communion, not with doctrine, with presence. These are not decorations. They are orientation devices. They turn the instrument of the soul until it faces the right direction, until the divine can find its way in. Kavana brings the focus. Theoria opens the gaze. Together, they create an interior alignment that becomes magnetic, not metaphorically, energetically. The operator begins to feel where the current flows strongest, what words carry weight, which names open what. And now you understand why the book says only a pure soul can be exalted, because purity is not performance, it is preparation. These disciplines are how you clear the glass, how you let the divine arrive without interference. You were not imagining it. That moment when you felt more alive in silence than in sound. That time when a single word cracked you open. That stillness before the rite begins, when something greater feels near. These are the signs that the mirror is clearing, that your attention is no longer scattered, that your presence has become a doorway. Try not to rush, try not to decode, just let yourself lean into it. Let your attention soften and lengthen, like breath, like prayer, without language. And know this, the divine does not need volume, it needs resonance. And resonance begins when you stop trying to reach it and begin allowing it to rise through you. And once it rises, you do not speak, not yet. Silence in the sacred traditions was never just absence, it was architecture, an inner vessel carved not from stone, but from attention, a clearing made for presence, a stillness shaped like welcome. The old initiates knew this. They guarded their tongues, not out of fear, but devotion. Silence was not a cage, it was a chalice. The Kabbalists would whisper teachings, never write them. Christian monks turned vows of silence into sacraments of focus. Ramakrishna's disciples sat in stillness so long their very breathing seemed to speak of other worlds. Each path different, the current the same. A quiet so alive it begins to listen for you. Perhaps you have already done this without knowing. The moment before you speak a deep truth, when the body stills itself and the breath pulls back, or when grief leaves you speechless and your silence says more than sound ever could. That kind of silence, not absence, presence in waiting. In sacred work, this waiting is everything. There are practices that polish the soul for this listening. Some fast, some withdraw, some go days without uttering a word, unless it carries intention. These are not performances. They are acts of energetic hygiene. You cleanse the outer noise so that the inner voice may rise. Because speech, too, is power. Every word carries charge, and silence, when used rightly, becomes the act of conserving that charge, not wasting it in commentary, not scattering it in reaction, but gathering it, drawing it inward, like breath held before descent. This is how the container is made. The triangular book does not scream, it does not plead. Its voice is precise, and its demands are clear. The soul must be pure before it can receive, and silence is the sacred threshold where that purity begins. It is not about detachment, not about muting emotion. It is not cold or distant. In fact, it is the opposite. A kind of intimacy with the unseen, a leaning in without demanding anything back. You may remember the sensation, the weightless space that opens when you stop chasing answers and begin listening for what has always been near. Some called it softening the soul, not weakening, softening. As heat softens wax, as time softens stone, it is the act of becoming available. Hermetic teachings describe this as magnetic increase. Silence builds attraction. Stillness generates the pull. The more quiet you become within, the more loudly the divine can be heard, not in volume, in presence. Try not to think of this as silence in the way the world defines it. This is not avoidance. This is not suppression. This is not being still because you are afraid to move. This is being still because something is approaching, something you do not want to disturb. You are right to wonder why certain truths only arrive when you are alone, why inspiration whispers when you are walking, not talking. This is the logic of the inner temple. This is what every esoteric order has kept alive behind locked doors. Silence is not empty, it is consecrated. And if you are to carry what the book intends for you to carry, then this silence is not optional. It is the chamber, the cup, the sacred pause in which the ritual breathes. Keep it, enter it, let it widen around you. And when it does, listen. You may already hear what waits behind it, but what hears it in return must be clean. Not good, not righteous, clean. This is where so many turn back, mistaking purity for virtue, thinking the divine speaks only to the well-behaved. But the book was never written for the obedient. It was written for the attuned. To be pure is not to be perfect. It is to be clear, to let nothing distort the signal between you and what calls. No judgment, no noise, no emotional static or personal interference. Just signal, just presence, just resonance. The soul as a lens, that is the image. A lens you polish not through morality, but through alignment. Perhaps you've noticed the difference. There are those who speak in high language and still feel hollow, and there are those who say little, but everything around them quiets when they enter. One performs, the other transmits. One mimics light, the other becomes it. That is the goal. And to become it, the inner layers must be tuned like an instrument, emotional, mental, energetic. Each one a chord in the current, and if one is off, the power will bend, or worse, collapse. The Hermetic traditions knew this. They built practices that had nothing to do with belief and everything to do with vibration. Daily meditation to clear the mind's fog. Breathing practices to unbind the emotional field. Visualization to reprogram the inner architecture. Not rituals of worship, rituals of calibration. Some schools gave it structure. The Golden Dawn taught the middle pillar, a luminous spine of light stretching from crown to earth, each point alive with divine names, each name a tuning fork, each visualization a realignment. The names were not decoration, they were voltage. They trained your system to hold the charge without distortion. Perhaps you have done this in some form, sat in the dark and imagined flame, focused so deeply on a word it began to hum inside you. That was not imagination, that was re-engineering. The architecture of your thought being rewired to carry pattern instead of impulse. The triangular book carries this under its surface. The way it speaks of fire that does not burn, of water that purifies without wetness, of angels that appear only to the soul made ready. These are not metaphors, they are functions. Ritual images describing the subtle work of inner cleansing. Because when the book says, "You shall be inspired if the soul is pure," it is not promising inspiration like a poem. It is describing a transmission. But the receiver must be able to receive. This is why the preparation matters more than the asking. The rite does not create the power, it connects to it, but only if you are resonant enough to meet it. It is not unlike tuning a radio. If the dial is just slightly off, you will hear nothing, or worse, interference. But when it lands in place, the signal comes through, pure, undistorted, alive. This is what is meant by purity, not obedience, not piety, but fidelity of signal. So the work is not to try harder, it is to remove the interference, the old bias, the reaction loops, the fear, the noise, to clear the lens, to clean the mirror. And yes, that mirror again, because when it is finally clear, when every layer has been focused into stillness, something happens. Light begins to move through you, not just into you, through. You stop seeking. You begin transmitting, not a magician, performing a ritual, a vessel, moving current. And from that point on, the divine does not visit you. It speaks through you, not just the voice, not just the name, but something deeper, something the ritual itself was always leading toward. Perhaps you felt it once, in a quiet hour, when no prayer was said aloud. Perhaps you caught it in the heat behind your breastbone, when the world fell still around a single breath. It was not power, it was presence. The triangular book, read slowly, reveals its disguise. It is not a manual for manipulating spirits. It is not a catalogue of divine sounds. It is a veil. And behind the veil is a work so intimate, so radiant, it cannot be spoken directly. It must be initiated. It must be remembered. What it truly teaches is transmutation, not of metals, not of outcomes, of self. It is the alchemy of the inner world. Ritual then becomes a crucible. Every gesture, a flame, every name, a solvent. It is not performance, it is process, not for show, for becoming. The end is not success, the end is divinity, a new configuration of being, consciousness, unknotted from identity, energy uncoiled from ego. The self you thought you were dissolved, the self you are becoming, shaped in light, not metaphor, not symbol, a physiological and energetic rewiring. Across systems, this form is known. The diamond body, the solar vessel, the resurrection current, the luminous form. It is whispered in tantric fire rituals, written in Coptic ascension rites, hidden behind the flame-drenched robes of the inner hermetica. A being no longer governed by flesh alone, a presence transfigured by radiance. And the ritual does not point to it, it engineers it, slowly, exactly, through solve, through purification, through coagula. It dismantles the inherited psyche, it clarifies the currents, and it draws down the higher pattern, not into thought, but into form. You may have already felt its architecture in the names that do not echo back, but seem to expand around you, in the invocations that burn rather than soothe, in the silence that does not empty but overflows. The body begins to vibrate differently. It becomes more porous, more structured. The subtle systems respond first, then the nervous system, then perception itself. The world is no longer filtered through separation, but through alignment. Light meets light, and the field around you alters. The book speaks often of purity, of readiness, of exaltation. These are not poetic flourishes. They are thresholds. You are not meant to worship the names. You are meant to become what they reveal. The rituals are not commands for the outer world. They are invitations for the soul to remember its original symmetry. All the earlier sections, all the seals and prayers and circles and names, they build toward this. Not to summon, to embody, not to control, to transform, to awaken the fire hidden behind the veil of skin, and to do so with precision, with reverence, with total inner surrender. You are not meant to remain unchanged. You are not meant to perform ritual as if it were theater. You are meant to become the vessel it refines, the shape it exalts, the force it makes radiant. And you do not do this by striving. You do it by yielding, not to the world, to the divine shape already waiting within you. That is the secret. Not to achieve, to allow, because the book is not a key to anything external. It is a mirror and a fire and a chisel. It does not only reveal your soul, it recasts it. And when the name finally speaks, not from your mouth, but from your marrow, it is no longer invocation. It is incarnation. And the form it takes is light. Not the light of fire or filament or sky, the light that speaks before sound, the light that breathes behind the bones. You have felt it in the stillness that does not calm but expands, in the heat between your shoulders when a name was spoken with full presence, in the invisible current that rises when you stop trying to reach for it. This light is not symbol, it is substance. Blavatsky called it the divine radiance. Theosophists called it the luminous current. But long before any of those names were written, it was already there. It is the fabric beneath the form, the breath of what you call divine. And it begins to rise through you when you purify, not your morals, but your motion. When your desires loosen, when your thoughts soften, when your body stops resisting its own sacred tempo. The rituals do not create this light. They reveal it. They peel back what blocked it. They burn what weighed it down. Through sacred names, through silence, through fasting, through quiet visualization of the spine turning to flame. All of it is calcination, the dissolving of heaviness, the refinement of inner metals. You do not see it first, you feel it, and then it becomes you, and it grows. The light body is not fantasy. It is not a hope. It is an echo. And as you continue the work, it strengthens. You begin to notice it when others speak and your skin listens. When your presence steadies rooms. When what once drained you now moves through you cleanly, untouched. The book hints at it again and again in angelic names, in flames, in the repeated washings and invocations. These are not decorations, these are maps. Each element a stage of radiance unfolding. Each symbol an invitation into greater alignment. And it is not instant, but it is cumulative. Every sincere act, every clearing breath, every forgotten moment when you were simply present, it adds, it alters, it builds the vessel of light from within. But that light must be moved, directed, aligned, and this is where the second pillar awakens. Will, not the will of control, not the strain of effort, but the will that arises once longing has been refined. Once desire no longer reaches outward, but opens upward. You know this will. You have met it when your decision felt like prayer, when your choice felt like clarity, not because it was loud, but because it was aligned. Theosophy speaks it simply. If the desire is pure, the will is pure. If the desire is clouded, so is the force. The triangular book never urges you to demand. It shows you how to align. Through names like TARAG, through petitions that carry weight, not because they are loud, but because they are righteous. Magical will is not force, it is conductivity. The moment you become fully aligned inside, the result becomes inevitable. Not because you imposed it, but because you became the pattern through which it must emerge. This is the path of the adept, not to dominate energy, but to resonate with the source so deeply that energy moves through you without obstruction. That is how the Magus commands, not through power, through harmony. Every breath in the ritual, every posture held, every syllable drawn into the body, they are rehearsals, training the will to be quiet and sharp, to listen before it speaks, to aim without doubt. And in time, the will becomes a current, steady, focused, unshakable. It steers not only ritual, it steers being. And when light meets will, not as two things, but as one, you are no longer in the work. You are the work, and the work is becoming divine, not by vision, not by knowledge, by embodiment. The light is no longer separate. The will is no longer reaching. The human is no longer only human. This is the point where the alchemical fire no longer refines, it reveals. What emerges is not a better version of the person who began. What emerges is something else. The Renaissance Magi once named it Homo Alchemicus, the divine human, the one who does not mirror heaven, but becomes its mirror, not by imitation, by integration. The geometries in the triangular book are not decorations. They are engines. They compress transformation into shape. They draw the operator inward. The names, the flames, the script angled like a seal. They were written not to be read, but to be remembered. They do not point outward. They are maps of metamorphosis. And there are effects, not just in silence, not only in dreams. The one who walks this path begins to carry a different presence. Longevity deepens, attention sharpens, words feel weighted. Others begin to pause before you speak. This is not performance, it is alignment. The solar body begins to radiate through the skin. You glow without brightness. You speak without noise. You affect without intention. Jung glimpsed this from another edge. He called it individuation, the return of the soul to itself. But here, it is not metaphor, it is metamorphosis. To build the solar body is to complete the great work from the inside out, not as symbol, as structure. Your instincts refine, your shadows rise and dissolve. You feel your identity loosen like old garments and fall away. But this is not ascension as escape. It is ascension as responsibility. The bearer of this light is not crowned, they are entrusted. You do not use it, you carry it. You do not chase outcomes, you hold alignment. The book makes no promises of reward. It asks a question of readiness. And when the old self thins out and the new shape steadies, your compass changes. What you once wanted begins to vanish. What once pulled you now feels distant. The ache for power gives way to the stillness of clarity. Compassion sharpens. Purpose crystallizes. Service no longer feels like sacrifice. It feels like symmetry. This is why the book is not about ritual. It is about reconfiguration. It does not ask you to perform. It asks you to become. When the work is whole, when the names are lived, rather than spoken. The magician is no longer reaching for the light. They are the light. They are the will. They are the unfolding. And then they close. Not in absence, not in retreat, but in containment. The final act of the triangular book is not proclamation. It is enclosure, like a flame sealed in crystal, like a bell rung only once, then buried beneath the earth. You have felt it, that strange pause near the end of the text, as if something essential was just withheld, as if the last word had been uttered without being written. The book does not conclude with a crescendo. It does not name the final name. It withdraws. It seals itself. The script fractures. The language turns. What was once invocation becomes riddle. What was clear becomes ciphered. Glyphs press into the page like footprints left by something not meant to linger, and the triangle tightens, narrowing to a single impossible point. This is not an accident. This is architecture. Perhaps you've already sensed it, that the text is a gate and a guardian at once. Its shape alone is a test. 3 sides, 3 faces, 3 thresholds. No straight lines. No invitation to wander through. You must fit yourself to its angles. You must turn inward to understand. This is not a book of answers. It is a book of veils. A book that dares to ask whether you can listen without hearing, whether you can receive what cannot be spoken. The final silence is the final instruction. There is precedent. Theosophists knew this rhythm well. They wrapped the highest truths in myth and allegory, not to obscure them, but to preserve them, like oil in a sealed lamp, hidden so the unready could not light it by mistake. Porphyry warned of this long before. Do not cast the mysteries before the profane, not out of disdain, out of necessity. Spirit cannot survive the careless breath of the unprepared. It dissolves in the glare of spectacle. The sacred requires shelter. The Kabbalists knew this. The Tetragrammaton, that ineffable name, was never uttered by the uninitiated. Only once a year, only by the high priest, and even then, only within the Holy of Holies. Silence was not the absence of knowledge. It was the guardrail around revelation. In Christian mysticism too, the pattern repeats. Teresa, Dionysius, John of the Cross, all wrote of the darkness where God dwells, the place where speech ceases and soul becomes vessel. You might remember this from your own quietest nights, when something vast pressed in and you had no words to meet it. Hermetic currents trace the same pattern. Access is not granted by intellect. It is earned through inward stillness. Only readiness opens the lock. The lock is always silence. The triangular book echoes all of this. The final pages are not instruction, but intention. No new gestures, no final incantation. Only a shape, only a seal. You are meant to sense that it is complete, not by what is added, but by what is held back. Imagine a scroll that ends not with a flourish, but with a wax stamp never broken. That is the feeling. Finality through refusal, completion through quiet. The last line is not a sentence. It is a space. It holds the weight of something withheld. It challenges you to intuit what cannot be transcribed. This is not omission. This is design. A veil is not absence. It is protection. The final silence is not a failure of language. It is the recognition that language has reached its edge. Even logos, that eternal word, must eventually fold into being. The truest truths are not spoken. They are lived, breathed, remembered. You were right to wonder why the book ends like that. You were right to pause. The pause is the point. This is not the kind of ritual that leaves behind a manual. It leaves behind a mirror, one that no longer reflects, one that receives. So many ancient rites ended the same way. The Eleusinian mysteries swore initiates to silence after revelation, not because they saw something shameful, but because what was seen could not be unseen. It was too sacred to explain, and so they carried it, not as memory, as vibration, as changed breath. They emerged into the world again, but something had shifted beneath the skin. Words were no longer capable. They had touched the wordless, and they had survived it. The book follows that same law. It lets you approach, it leads you deeper, it lights the lamp, and then it leaves you there, not alone, not abandoned, but faced with the only thing that has ever mattered, your readiness and your silence. These are not the end of the work. They are the chamber into which the final work begins. Perhaps you have already felt how the loudest truths do not arrive through thunder, but through stillness, that the most radiant force carries no sound. It waits, it listens, and it only moves when called from the deepest quiet. There are 4 pillars. You may remember them: to know, to dare, to will, to be silent. The last is not the least. It is the seal. Without it, the others remain open circuits, incomplete vessels. Silence is the skin that holds the current. This silence is not suppression. It is conservation. It is the act of protecting power from the dilution of casual breath. You do not pour gold into broken clay. You do not cry the names of flame across a windless field. You hold them. You let them heat you from within. Each time you do not speak, the work settles deeper. Every unsaid word becomes a stone in the inner temple. And when you do speak again, it will be different. Fewer words, clearer force, more transmission than talk. You may feel tempted, even now, to share, to explain what you have touched. But this path was not meant to be explained. It was meant to be embodied. The mystery is not given to be spoken. It is given to be carried. Even magic itself obeys this law. Force leaks through unguarded speech. Ritual power scatters when named without need. The spell breaks not with failure, but with disclosure. Only silence sustains it. You were right to feel this is not secrecy for its own sake. It is protection, not of tradition, but of vibration. Silence is the filter, the sieve through which only the ready pass. The shallow cannot sit in it. The unprepared will rush to fill it, but the one who waits inside it, breath by breath, begins to glow. The triangular book knew this. Its final act is not instruction. It is expectation. Not another symbol, not another divine name. Just the space, just the turning inward. The gesture is withheld so that you may become it. No more commands, no more conjurations. You are no longer being guided. You are being entrusted. The book withdraws because the book has given you everything it could without damaging what it came to serve. The silence now is not a pause, it is the ritual. You hold it, not just for yourself, but for the current that moved through you. To speak it too soon would break it. To speak it too often would burn it away. What you guard now is not a secret, it is a fire, and it is alive. This is the shift. From reader to keeper, from practitioner to guardian. The weight of this quiet is not heaviness, it is density. It is the pressure of presence, too vast for the tongue. You may feel it behind your eyes, in the bones of your hands, the sensation that something larger is now watching through you. There is no more need for instruction. The divine speaks only in stillness now. What remains is yours to hold, yours to steward, yours to transmit through action, not explanation. The true initiate does not speak carelessly. Every word carries charge. Every utterance alters the room, so speak little, and only from the center. The book's final challenge was never printed. It was implied. Knock thrice, not at a door, but in the heart, and then be still. Let nothing rise but breath. And when the silence deepens, do not fill it. Let it become you. This is not the absence of power. This is the seal of it.